Hello there. I received a request from a student to explain the theory of constraints. That's what TOC is. And there's really two parts to it. The first topic is what we're going to look at here, the 5 focusing steps, and then in a separate video, we'll look at the concept of drum buffer rope as a way to schedule and manage scheduling in a factory. So the 5 focusing steps in the theory of constraints is a way to identify a bottleneck and break the bottleneck so you can improve the system. So what we've got here is just a mythical 5-step process A, B, C, D, and E, and then it's shipped out to the marketplace. And below them, this is the rates per hour. So A can make 12 pieces an hour, B can make 8, C, D, and E, and then the market wants 20 an hour. So we cannot make it as fast as the marketplace, it looks like, because B is our bottleneck or the slowest spot. So when we look at the 5-step process, number 1 is it says identify the bottleneck. The bottleneck, by definition, of course, is the slowest step in the process. And so the reason we care about it is because we can't get any more out the door than what's going through the bottleneck. So A can make 12 an hour, and every hour it passes 12 over to B, but B can only pass 8 through to C. So regardless of what the capacities are for A, C, D, and E, only 8 is getting through, and that's all that can get out the door. So number 1 is to identify the bottleneck. Number 2, step 2, is to make sure you maximize the bottleneck, because any loss at the bottleneck is a loss for the whole system. So if somebody goes on break and the machines aren't working, or the machine breaks down, maybe material doesn't get there, and we only get 6 an hour through to B, then only 6 is going to get through. So that's going to be a loss going out the door, because 6 gets to C, goes to D, goes to E, and 6 goes out the door. C, D, and E can all make more than that, but they're only going to get 6 in this case. So we're only as good as what goes through the bottleneck. So we want to make sure we maximize our bottleneck and exploit all the available time we can to make sure we're working on the right thing. It's getting through. We get 8 per hour done. Now, step 3 is something that gets somewhat controversial, or people wrestle with. But step 3 says subordinate everything else to the bottleneck. In other words, there's no sense A making 12 per hour. You might as well make 8 per hour, because 8's all that's getting through, and use the additional time to work on process improvements, anything else that you want to work on, training, whatever, maintenance on the machine or whatever. So have everybody else work at 8 per hour, since all that 8 can happen is 8 gets out the door. So that's step 3. Step 4 now is basically saying break the bottleneck. And we don't mean make it fail, but improve it. So in other words, if we're able to add another machine, whatever, improve the process, and we get it up to 18 per hour, let's say, okay, then that B is no longer the bottleneck. So A makes 12, passes it on to B. B makes 12, passes it on to C, which can pass it on to D, but only 10 is going to get through, because D can only do 10 per hour. And then E does 10, and we get 10 out the door. So we've increased our throughput out the door from 8 to 10. So we're not getting the full benefit of it, but we're doing better, which kind of tackles then our 5th step, which is to go to step 1 and find the next bottleneck, which in this case, of course, is going to be what? Now it's going to be D, because that's the slowest spot. And we're going to go back through this process continually to improve it, with the goal of ultimately making the marketplace the bottleneck. So give an example here. We improve D to, let's say, 30. The bottleneck moves to A. Let's say we double that. goes up to 24 per hour. Then C becomes the bottleneck. Let's say we double that. Then E becomes the bottleneck. We double that. Now B's still the bottleneck because it's less than the marketplace. So we come back to B, and let's say we double it again and improve it. Now we can get what? 24 through the process, okay, from A through E, but the marketplace only wants 20 an hour. So what this means for you and I is we can do better than the marketplace. And the question comes up on the bottom here. If we look at 100% of the market, does our company have 100% of the market? And chances are we do not. And if that's the case, as soon as that becomes the bottleneck out in the marketplace, we should drop our lead times to the customer so that they will buy more. And when they buy more, of course, we're going to expand the size of the pie, get more business. And then all of a sudden, with the shorter lead times, maybe the marketplace goes up to 30 an hour. Okay, now it throws the bottleneck back in the factory and we continue the process. So it's a way to improve throughput as well as gain market share as well. And that's kind of what the 5 focusing steps are.